The silence inside the crystal hall felt heavy, like the air itself was mourning. Thousands of dragons filled the massive chamber, their scales reflecting the soft blue light that came from the walls. Some were as small as horses, others larger than buildings. They sat in perfect stillness, watching the center of the room where their queen lay. Queen Sariel's platinum scales no longer glowed with the inner fire that had made her legendary. Her body stretched across the raised platform, wings folded peacefully at her sides. She had ruled for 3,000 years, and now she was gone. The dragons had no words for their grief. They simply sat and remembered. Prince Aldrich stood closest to his mother's body. He was young for a dragon, barely 200 years old. His silver scales hadn't yet taken on the deep shine of adulthood. He kept his head bowed, trying not to let the others see how lost he felt. The council had already told him he was too young to rule. They would decide the future of their people, not him. High Counselor Rin, an ancient bronze dragon with scars from countless battles, watched the gathering with tired eyes. He knew what came next would not be easy. The dragon clans were already arguing about succession. Some wanted to split the realm into separate territories. Others pushed for a council rule. Nobody agreed on anything except that they had lost something precious. Then something impossible happened. A small crack of light appeared in the air near the Queen's platform. It grew wider, spinning and sparkling with colors that didn't belong in their world. Every dragon turned to look as the portal stabilized. Through it stepped a tiny figure that made no sense at all. A human child. The boy looked about 8 years old by human standards. He wore a dirty backpack and clothes that had seen better days. His brown hair stuck up in odd directions, and his face had smudges of dirt on both cheeks. He blinked in the sudden brightness of the hall, looking around at the thousands of massive creatures staring at him. Any reasonable being would have screamed or run. The boy did neither. He looked at the dragons with open curiosity, then his eyes found Queen Sariel's body. His expression changed to something soft and sad. He walked forward slowly, his small footsteps echoing in the silent hall. Dragons began growling low in their throats. A human in their most sacred space during their darkest hour felt like an insult. Several younger dragons moved to block the child's path, but he simply walked around them. He wasn't being rude or aggressive. He just seemed determined to reach the platform. "Stop him," someone called out. "Remove the creature before it defiles this place." But Prince Aldrich raised one clawed hand. "Wait," he said quietly. Something about the boy's calm manner fascinated him. The child showed no fear at all, even surrounded by beings that could end his life with a single breath. The boy reached the platform and looked up at Queen Sariel's enormous form. He was so small next to her that he barely reached the height of her front foot. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a single flower. It was small and yellow, already wilting from the journey. The child placed it carefully on the platform near the Queen's head. "I'm sorry you died," the boy said simply. His voice was young but steady. "You must have been very important to them." The dragons didn't know what to make of this. Their queen had died 3 days ago after a sudden illness that even their greatest healers couldn't cure. She had been in pain at the end, calling out for something or someone they couldn't identify. Many thought she had died with regrets, though no one knew what they might be. Counselor Brennus, a massive red dragon known for his conservative views, stepped forward with smoke curling from his nostrils. "This is an abomination," he declared. "A human has entered our sacred hall uninvited. We must remove it immediately before we are further insulted." "He's just a child," Aldrich said, surprised by his own boldness in contradicting an elder counselor. "A human child," Brennus corrected. "Weak, short-lived, and prone to corruption. They have no place among us. Their kind lives barely a century if they're lucky. What could such a creature possibly understand about loss or honor?" The boy looked at Brennus without flinching. "My mom died last year," he said. "I understand lots about loss." That statement hung in the air like a challenge. Several dragons shifted uncomfortably. The child had lost a parent too, just like their young prince. The parallel was impossible to ignore. Aldrich made a decision that would change everything. He stepped down from the platform and walked over to the human child. Up close, the size difference was almost comical. The dragon prince's head was larger than the boy's entire body, but Aldrich lowered himself until they were eye to eye. "What is your name?" Aldrich asked. "Owen," the boy replied. "Owen, I am Prince Aldrich. You have entered our realm at a difficult time. How did you come to be here?" Owen looked back at the portal, which was already starting to fade. "I was exploring caves near my foster home. I found some old drawings on the wall and touched them. Then everything got bright and spinny and I ended up here." He paused. "I don't think I can get back the same way." The portal vanished completely, leaving no trace it had ever existed. Owen watched it disappear without panic, just acceptance. Aldrich found himself admiring that quality. Most beings would be hysterical at being stranded in another realm. "The ancient gateway," High Counselor Rin said thoughtfully. "We sealed those passages millennia ago, for one to open now at this moment." He trailed off, looking at Queen Sariel's body with new wonder. "Coincidence," Brennis snapped. "The boy must be sent away. We have resources to open a return portal. This disruption has gone on long enough." "No," Aldrich said firmly. Every dragon turned to look at him. The young prince stood straighter, even though he felt terrified inside. "I claim this human as my ward. He will stay under my protection." Gasps echoed through the hall. A dragon claiming a human as a ward was almost unheard of in their long history. It meant taking full responsibility for the human's actions and safety. It also meant defying the council at a time when Aldrich had no real authority. High Counselor Rin studied the prince for a long moment. Then he looked at Owen, who stood calmly waiting to see what would happen. Finally, Rin nodded slowly. "The prince has spoken his claim. By our laws, it must be honored unless proven dangerous or unwise. We will observe and judge accordingly." Brennis looked furious but said nothing more. Other council members murmured among themselves, some approving, others clearly upset. Owen looked up at Aldrich. "Does this mean I can stay?" "It means you'll stay with me," Aldrich said. "Whether that proves to be a good thing or a terrible mistake, only time will tell." The boy smiled for the first time since arriving. "Thanks. I promise I'll try not to cause problems." Aldrich almost laughed at that. The human child had no idea what he just walked into. Their entire civilization was fracturing, grief turning into anger and division. Political factions were forming. Some dragons wanted to maintain their ancient ways. Others pushed for change. And now a human child stood at the center of it all. As the dragons began filing out of the hall, still murmuring about this strange development, Aldrich noticed something. Owen looked back at Queen Sariel one more time. The boy's expression was thoughtful, almost like he was trying to memorize her face. "She looks sad," Owen said quietly, "even now, like she was worried about something." Aldrich felt a chill run down his spine. He had thought the exact same thing but hadn't voiced it. How could a human child who'd never met his mother see what he himself had noticed? "Come," Aldrich said gently. "You must be hungry and tired. We have much to discuss, and you have much to learn about where you are." Owen nodded and followed the young dragon prince out of the crystal hall. Behind them, Queen Sariel's body continued to lie in state, the small yellow flower a strange and unexpected tribute from a world away. Neither the boy nor the dragon knew it yet, but their meeting would reshape the fate of two species and echo across the galaxy itself. Owen's new room made him feel smaller than he already was. The ceiling stretched so high above that he could barely see it in the dim light. The bed was designed for a young dragon, which meant it was roughly the size of a small house. He'd made a nest for himself in one corner using cushions that were individually larger than his entire body. 3 days had passed since his arrival. 3 days of stares, whispers, and dragons who couldn't decide if he was fascinating or offensive. Owen handled it the way he'd learned to handle most things in his short life. He stayed quiet, paid attention, and tried to be useful. Aldrich visited him every morning. The dragon prince would curl up near Owen's cushion nest and tell him about dragon history, their culture, and the complicated politics currently tearing their society apart. Owen listened carefully and asked questions that often surprised Aldrich with their insight. "Why don't dragons talk to other species?" Owen asked on the fourth morning. Aldrich shifted uncomfortably. "We have always believed ourselves above such concerns. Other races are short-lived and focused on trivial matters. Dragons live for thousands of years. We see civilizations rise and fall like seasons changing. What could we possibly gain from such temporary beings?" "Friends," Owen suggested. "My mom always said that time doesn't make something valuable, caring does." The dragon prince went quiet at that. He'd never thought about it that way before. Dragons measured worth in power and longevity, but this small human was teaching him different ways to measure value. Their conversation was interrupted by a servant dragon who informed Aldrich that his presence was required at a council meeting. Aldrich sighed but rose to leave. "Stay here," he told Owen. "Some of the council members would prefer you didn't wander." Owen nodded, but after Aldrich left, he found himself too restless to sit still. He decided to explore the corridor just outside his room. Surely that couldn't cause too much trouble. The hallways of the Dragon Palace were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Carved columns stretched upward like stone trees. The floors were polished so smooth they reflected everything. Owen walked carefully, his sneakers squeaking on the marble. He found a courtyard garden where several young dragons were gathered. They looked to be around Aldrich's age, maybe younger. They were playing some kind of game that involved tossing a glowing sphere between them using only their wings. When they noticed Owen, the game stopped. "It's the human," one of them said. "Her scales were deep green with gold edges. I heard you made Counselor Brennus so angry he burned a hole through 3 floors." "That wasn't on purpose," Owen said. "I just asked why dragons don't help sick people from other worlds if they have healing magic." A blue dragon laughed. "Brennus probably choked on his own smoke. No one questions him like that." "I'm Iris," the green dragon said. "This is Finn and Mara." She gestured to the blue dragon and a smaller purple one. "We wanted to meet you but weren't supposed to. Aldrich said you were off limits to everyone but him." "He's trying to protect me," Owen explained. "Some dragons want me gone." "Most of the old ones do," Finn agreed. "They think humans are primitive, but I've heard stories about your kind. You live on a death world, right? With predators and diseases and natural disasters." Owen shrugged. "Earth has some dangerous stuff, yeah, but you learn to deal with it." Mara, the purple dragon, moved closer to examine Owen. "You're so small, though. How do you survive anything?" "Tools," Owen said, "and thinking ahead and working together." He paused. "Can I ask you something? What's wrong with the younger dragons here? I heard some of them are sick." The 3 young dragons exchanged worried looks. "The sleeping sickness," Iris said quietly. "It started 2 months ago. Young dragons fall asleep and can't wake up. We've lost 11 so far. The healers don't know what causes it." Owen felt a chill. "Can I see one of the sick dragons?" Finn shook his head. "They're quarantined. Healers are afraid it might spread more if we visit." "That's actually smart," Owen said. "On Earth, we quarantine sick people too. It's called infection control." His mind was working through possibilities. Do the sick dragons have anything in common? Same food, same water source, same location. The 3 young dragons stared at him. "The healers never ask that," Mara said slowly. "They've been focused on trying to cure the ones already sick." "You have to find the source," Owen explained. If you don't know what's causing it, the cure might not work, or more dragons might get sick. He thought for a moment. Could I talk to someone who takes care of the sick ones? Before they could answer, a loud voice echoed across the courtyard. The human walks free while dragon children suffer and die. Counselor Brennus landed in the courtyard with enough force to crack the stone beneath his feet. Several other adult dragons followed him, all looking stern and angry. The young dragons quickly moved away from Owen, suddenly afraid. "You dare wander our halls unsupervised," Brennus said, smoke curling from his nostrils. "You disrespect our customs and question our ways. Prince Aldrich may have claimed you, but I will not stand by while a human corrupts our youth with primitive ideas." "I was just asking about the sleeping sickness," Owen said, trying to keep his voice steady even though his heart was pounding. "I thought maybe I could help." "Help?" Brennus laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. "You are a child of a species that hasn't mastered even basic space travel. Our healers have studied medicine for centuries. What could you possibly offer?" "A different perspective," Owen said. He knew he should probably shut up, but something in him refused to back down. "Sometimes when you're too close to a problem, you miss simple answers." "Simple," Brennus repeated, his voice dangerous. "You dare call our efforts simple?" "That's not what I meant," Owen started, but Brennus was already moving forward. "Enough. I call for a trial of worth. If this human cannot prove his value to our society, he must be exiled. Aldrich's claim will be voided." The other adult dragons murmured agreement. Iris and her friends looked terrified. Owen felt his stomach drop. He'd heard about trials of worth from Aldrich. They were ancient tests designed for adult dragons to prove themselves worthy of high positions. They involved challenges of strength, wisdom, and courage. No human had ever taken one. No human could possibly pass. "When?" Owen asked, lifting his chin even though he wanted to run. 3 days, Brennus announced. "That gives you time to prepare, though preparation will make no difference. You will fail, human, and then you will leave our realm forever." The counselor and his supporters left the courtyard. The young dragons rushed to Owen's side. "You can't do the trial," Finn said urgently. "It's impossible even for young dragons. An adult human couldn't pass it. A child definitely can't." "I don't have a choice," Owen said. His hands were shaking, but his voice stayed calm. "If I refuse, they'll say I'm a coward and exile me anyway. At least this way I have a chance." "What chance?" Mara asked desperately. "The strength test requires moving the stone of ancients. It weighs more than 50 of you." Owen smiled despite his fear. "Then I guess I better start thinking creatively. That's what humans do best." When Aldrich heard what happened, he flew into a rage that surprised everyone who knew him. He confronted Brennus directly, accusing him of setting up an impossible test to get rid of Owen. But the challenge had been formally issued. By dragon law, it couldn't be withdrawn. That night, Aldrich sat with Owen in the oversized room, both of them quiet. "I'm sorry," Aldrich said finally. "I should have protected you better." "You can't protect me from everything," Owen replied. He was drawing diagrams on a piece of paper he'd found, working through ideas for the strength challenge. "Besides, maybe this is good. If I pass, nobody can say I don't belong here." "And if you fail?" Owen looked at his friend. "Then at least I tried. My mom always said trying matters more than succeeding." Aldrich felt something break and reform inside his chest. This small human facing an impossible test wasn't giving up. He wasn't complaining. He was planning, working, fighting with the only weapons he had, his mind and his determination. "I'll help you prepare," Aldrich said firmly. "We have 3 days, we'll use every minute." Owen grinned. "Then we better get started. Tell me everything about the trial of worth, every detail. There has to be a way." As the Dragon Prince began explaining the ancient challenges, neither of them noticed the small group of young dragons gathering outside the door. Iris, Finn, Mara, and a dozen others. Word had spread quickly about the humans' trial. The young dragons had made a decision. If the old ways were going to condemn someone for being different, for trying to help, for asking questions, then maybe the old ways needed to change. And maybe, just maybe, this small human could show them how. The arena had been carved from a mountain thousands of years ago. Stone seats rose in circles around a central platform where Owen now stood, looking very small and very alone. Thousands of dragons filled the seats, their scales creating a rainbow of colors against the gray rock. The morning sun beat down hot and bright. Owen wore simple clothes and carried a backpack that Aldrich had helped him pack. Inside were tools he'd spent 3 days making, rope made from plant fibers, wooden poles he'd shaped and tied together, and rocks he'd carefully selected for weight and shape. The young dragons had helped him gather materials, sneaking supplies to him when the adults weren't watching. Counselor Brenna stood on a raised platform, his red scales gleaming. The trial of worth consists of 3 challenges: strength, wisdom, and heart. The human will face each in turn. Failure in any challenge means exile. He looked down at Owen with barely concealed satisfaction. Begin with strength. 4 adult dragons rolled an enormous boulder onto the platform. The stone of ancients was black as night and smooth as glass. Ancient runes covered its surface, though Owen couldn't read them. The stone was taller than him and at least 50 times his weight. The challenge is simple, Brennis announced. Move the stone from its current position to the marked circle 10 meters away. You have until the sun reaches its peak. He glanced at the sky. That gives you perhaps 2 hours. Owen walked around the stone slowly, examining it from all angles. He'd expected something like this. Pure strength tests were common in trials across many cultures. The dragons expected him to fail immediately, to prove that humans were too weak to matter. He pulled the wooden poles from his backpack and began fitting them together. The dragons watched with confusion as Owen created a long lever, using rope to bind the pieces tightly. He gathered several flat rocks and stacked them carefully, creating a fulcrum point near the stone. "What is the human doing?" someone in the crowd asked. "Playing with sticks," another answered with a laugh. Owen ignored them. He positioned his lever under the stone's edge and placed the fulcrum in the optimal position based on calculations he'd done the night before. Then he pushed down on the long end of the lever with all his strength. The stone shifted slightly. The laughter in the crowd died. Owen repositioned the fulcrum, adjusted the lever, and pushed again. The stone lifted a few inches. He quickly shoved rocks underneath to hold it in place, then repositioned his lever and repeated the process. "He's using mechanical advantage," Iris whispered to Finn in the crowd. "Simple machines. We learned about those in ancient texts but never thought to apply them." "Because we don't need to," Finn replied. "We're strong enough to move things directly." "But he's not," Mara said quietly, "so he found another way." For 2 hours Owen worked without stopping. Lever, lift, prop, reposition. Each movement gained a few inches. Sweat soaked his clothes. His muscles screamed in pain. His hands developed blisters that broke and bled, but he didn't stop. The dragons watched in growing silence. This wasn't what they'd expected. They'd thought the human would try and fail quickly, proving their point. Instead, they were witnessing something they'd never considered: weakness transformed through intelligence, limitation overcome through creativity. When the sun reached its peak, the stone of ancients sat exactly in the center of the marked circle. Owen collapsed next to it, gasping for breath. His hands were bleeding, his arms shaking from exhaustion, but he'd done it. Brenna stared at the stone for a long moment before speaking. "The challenge is past." He sounded less pleased than before. "We proceed to wisdom." They gave Owen an hour to rest and drink water. Aldrich wanted to stop the trial, seeing how exhausted his friend was, but Owen refused. "We finish this," he said simply. For the wisdom challenge, Owen was led to a quiet chamber deep inside the mountain. An elderly dragon named Scholar Vex waited there, surrounded by ancient books and scrolls. "The riddle of queens has stumped our greatest minds for 1,000 years," Vex explained. His voice was kind despite his role in the trial. "Many have tried to solve it. All have failed. You must answer correctly or be judged unwise." He recited the riddle slowly. "What grows stronger when shared, dies when hoarded, and makes mountains bow?" Owen sat down and thought carefully. The obvious answers wouldn't work. The riddle mentioned queens specifically. His mind went to Queen Sariel, lying in state in the Crystal Hall. He thought about the sadness Aldrich described in his mother's final days. "Love," Owen said quietly, "or maybe kindness. They're kind of the same thing." Vex leaned forward. "Explain your answer." "Love grows stronger when you share it," Owen said. "The more people you love and who love you back, the stronger it becomes. But if you hoard it, keep it just for yourself, it dies. You become lonely and bitter." He paused. "And love makes mountains bow because even the proudest, strongest beings can be humbled by caring about someone. Queen Sariel was powerful, but she loved her people. That made her more than just strong. It made her great." The chamber went absolutely silent. Scholar Vex stared at Owen with wide eyes. "In 1,000 years, no one has answered correctly. Most focused on physical things, water, fire, gold. But the riddle of queens was about Queen Sariel's own philosophy. She believed that love and compassion were the true measures of strength." Brennus looked like he'd swallowed something sour. "The challenge is past," he said stiffly. The final challenge, Hart, was the one Owen feared most. They led him back to the arena as the sun began to set. A strange device sat in the center, covered in glowing runes. Scholar Vex explained that it would show Owen his greatest fear, and he would have to face it without running. "Many warriors have fled from this challenge," Vex said gently. "There is no shame in fear itself. The shame is in letting fear control you." Owen nodded and stepped into the device's range. The runes flared bright, and suddenly the arena disappeared. He stood in darkness, complete total darkness, and he was alone. No Aldrich, no Iris or the other young dragons, no one at all. A voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "You will always be alone. No one keeps you. Your mother died and left you. Your foster families send you away. Even these dragons will abandon you. You are temporary and forgettable." Owen felt tears on his cheeks. This was his deepest fear, the one he never spoke about. Being forgotten, being left behind, mattering to no one. He could run from the device and make the vision stop. Part of him wanted to. But he thought about Queen Sariel, dying sad because she couldn't help her people change. He thought about Aldrich, risking his position to protect a human child. He thought about Iris, Finn, and Mara, bringing him supplies even though it could get them in trouble. "You're right," Owen said to the darkness. "Maybe I will be alone someday. Maybe everyone will forget me." He took a shaky breath. "But that doesn't change what I do right now. Even if I'm alone, even if no one remembers, I'll still try to help people. I'll still try to be kind. Because that's who I want to be, whether anyone notices or not." The darkness shattered like glass. Owen stood back in the arena, tears still on his face but standing straight. The runes on the device had turned from red to gold. Scholar Vex's voice was thick with emotion. "True courage, the rarest kind, the challenge is past." Brennus stood slowly. The huge red dragon looked around at the thousands watching. He could see the change in their eyes. The human had done the impossible, not through dragon strength or magic, but through human determination, creativity, and heart. "The trial of worth is complete," Brennus announced. "The human has passed all 3 challenges." Cheering erupted from the younger dragons. Even some older ones looked impressed. Aldrich flew down to the arena floor and carefully nuzzled Owen, being gentle with his exhausted friend. But Brennus wasn't finished. "However," he said, and the cheering stopped, Passing the trial only proves the human has worth. It does not address the larger issue facing our realm. He spread his wings wide. A message arrived this morning from the Galactic Coalition. They warn of an ancient enemy called the Void Swarm. 12 worlds have fallen. The swarm moves toward our territory. The Coalition requests our aid. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Coalition had asked dragons for help before and been refused. Dragons didn't involve themselves in galactic affairs. They ask us to join their alliance. Brennus continued, to send our warriors to fight alongside lesser species, to risk dragon lives for beings that live and die like mayflies. He looked at Owen. Tell us, human, what would your kind do? Every dragon turned to look at Owen. The exhausted, bleeding, barely standing child who had just proven himself against impossible odds. Owen thought about Earth, about humanity's history, about how people came together when things got really bad. We'd help, he said simply, because that's what you do when someone needs help. You don't ask if they're strong enough or live long enough to be worth it. You just help. The arena erupted into arguments, old versus young, traditional versus change. The future of dragon civilization hung in the balance. And somehow, a small human boy stood at the center of it all. The ship that came to collect them was unlike anything Owen had ever imagined. It looked like a massive teardrop made of silver metal that seemed to shift colors in the light. Aldrich explained it was a coalition diplomatic vessel, designed to transport representatives from different worlds. Dragons rarely used ships since they could fly through space using magic, but the coalition insisted on following proper diplomatic protocols. Owen pressed his face against the viewing port as the ship lifted away from the dragon homeworld. He could see the crystal palace growing smaller, the mountains shrinking to mere wrinkles on the planet's surface. Then they punched through the atmosphere and stars surrounded them in every direction. It's beautiful, Owen whispered. Wait until you see Haven, Aldrich said. The Dragon Prince had squeezed himself into the ship's cargo bay, which was the only space large enough for him. Owen sat on his friend's forearm, which was more comfortable than the human-sized seats. The Coalition headquarters, hundreds of species all living together. High Counselor Rin had insisted on joining them, along with Scholar Vex and, surprisingly, Counselor Brennus. The Red Dragon claimed he wanted to see firsthand what the Coalition was offering before the Dragon Council made any final decisions. Owen suspected Brennus really wanted to make sure they didn't agree to anything foolish. The journey took 2 days. Owen spent the time learning everything he could about the Coalition from the ship's database. The Alliance had started 500 years ago when the Chiton Collective and the Deepborn put aside their war to fight a common threat. Over time, more species joined. Now over 300 worlds were members. Humanity had joined only 30 years ago. Owen felt proud reading about First Contact. Humans had impressed the Coalition with their adaptability and problem-solving skills. They weren't the strongest or smartest species, but they had a talent for bringing different groups together. When they finally arrived at Haven, Owen's jaw dropped. The space station was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. Different sections had been built by different species, creating a wild mix of architectural styles. Some areas looked like crystal gardens. Others were purely functional metal. Still others seemed to grow organically, like they were alive. Their ship docked at a bay designed for large visitors. The doors opened to reveal a delegation waiting for them. Owen saw his first non-dragon, non-human aliens and tried not to stare. The leader stepped forward on 4 legs. She looked like a fox had been crossed with a deer, standing about as tall as Owen with russet fur and intelligent amber eyes. Welcome to Haven. I am Ambassador Kiri of the Fenari. We're honored to host the dragon delegation. Aldrich bowed his head respectfully, and Owen quickly copied the gesture. Brennus grunted but didn't say anything rude, which Owen counted as a win. Kiri led them through the station. Everywhere Owen looked, he saw different species. Insected beings with clicking mandibles walked past tall humanoids made of what looked like living crystal. Aquatic creatures floated in water-filled tubes that ran along the ceilings. Small flying beings zipped between them all like colorful birds. Chaos, Brennus muttered. How does anything get decided with so many different voices? Through compromise and patience, Kiri said pleasantly. Skills that serve us well. They were brought to a massive conference chamber. A large table dominated the center, with seats and spaces designed for different body types. At the head sat General Cade, the military commander Kiri had mentioned. He was Fenari like her but larger and covered in scars. His right ear was missing the top half. "Thank you for coming," Cade said as they settled in. His voice was rough but sincere. "We know dragons value their isolation. That you've come at all gives us hope." "Tell us about this threat," Rin said. "The Void Swarm. We know only what the message contained." Cade activated a holographic display. Owen watched in horror as it showed worlds being consumed by black masses of writhing creatures. They moved like locusts, stripping planets of all biological matter in days. "The swarm is ancient," Cade explained. "They've appeared throughout galactic history, always the same. A hive mind that consumes and grows. They emerge from deep space, attack for several years, then vanish again. We don't know where they come from or why they eventually leave." "How do you fight them?" Aldrich asked. "Barely," Cade admitted. "Standard weapons slow them down but don't stop them. They adapt quickly. Each swarm creature is disposable, but together they're devastating. We've evacuated 12 worlds, lost millions of lives, and they're getting closer to the core systems." "What do you need from us?" Scholar Vex asked. "Everything you can give," Cade said bluntly. "Dragon fire burns hot enough to destroy swarm creatures completely. Dragon magic can shield entire populations. Dragon strength can hold choke points. We're not asking you to fight our war. We're asking you to help us survive." Brennus snorted. "You ask us to risk dragon lives for species we don't know, for worlds we've never seen. What's in it for us?" "Survival," Cade said simply. "The swarm doesn't care about alliances or neutrality. When they reach your territory, and they will, you'll face them alone, or you can face them with friends." Owen had been quiet, but now he spoke up. "Can I ask a question?" Cade looked at him with curiosity. "The human child, your presence with the dragons is unusual. Please ask." "You said the swarm has appeared before throughout history. Did anyone ever figure out what they want? They must want something." Cade blinked. "We've always assumed they just want to feed." "But they leave eventually," Owen pressed. "They don't stay and eat everything, so maybe they're looking for something specific, or running from something. Things that seem like simple monsters usually aren't." The room went quiet. Cade exchanged glances with Kiri. "No one has ever asked that," the general admitted. "We've been so focused on fighting them, we never questioned their motivation." "The boy makes a good point," Scholar Vex said thoughtfully. "Understanding an enemy is the first step to defeating them." Before they could discuss further, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Cade's communicator crackled to life with urgent voices. His face went pale under his fur. "There's been an attack," he said, standing quickly. "Colony World Terrans, population 50,000. The swarm hit them an hour ago. They weren't supposed to be that far into our territory yet." "How long until your forces arrive?" Rin asked. 6 hours minimum," Cade said grimly. "The colony has maybe 3. Aldrich looked at Owen, then at the other dragons. "How far is Terrans from here?" 20 minutes by dragon flight through the between space," Kiri said, checking her console. "But you don't have warriors with you. This is a diplomatic mission." "We're still dragons," Aldrich said firmly. He looked at Brennus. "Counselor, I know you oppose joining the coalition, but there are 50,000 beings about to die. Whatever we decide politically can wait. This can't." Brennus stared at the young prince for a long moment. Owen held his breath, waiting. The red dragon's prejudices were well known. Would he really refuse to help? "I did not come all this way to watch cowardice," Brennus said finally. "If we're going to show the galaxy what dragons are capable of, we might as well start now." Rin nodded. "Scholar Vex and I agree. This is a chance to see the swarm firsthand, to understand what we're dealing with." Cade looked stunned. "You do this without orders from your council, without backup." "We're dragons," Rin said simply. "We don't need backup." Owen jumped to his feet. "I'm coming too." Every being in the room turned to stare at him. Aldrich shook his head. "Absolutely not. This is going to be a war zone. You'll need someone to coordinate with coalition forces on the ground," Owen argued. "Someone who can communicate with both dragons and other species. Someone small enough to move through buildings and help evacuate civilians." He met Aldrich's eyes. "You need me." "He's right," Kiri said reluctantly. "Our ground forces use communication protocols dragons won't be familiar with. A liaison could save lives." Aldrich looked torn. Owen could see the war in his friend's eyes between protecting him and doing what was right. "I'll keep him safe," Aldrich promised, though Owen wasn't sure if he was talking to the others or himself. Cade pulled up tactical displays. "Terran's is a mining colony, underground facilities connected by tunnels. The swarm is hitting the surface installations, driving people down. If we can hold the tunnel entrances long enough to evacuate through the lower levels." He looked at the dragons. "Can you do that?" Brennus showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "Watch us." 20 minutes later, 4 dragons punched out of between space above a world on fire. Owen clung to Aldrich's back, watching smoke and flames rise from dozens of locations across the surface. The sky was dark with swarm creatures, looking like a storm cloud made of nightmares. They had no plan, no backup, no time, just 4 dragons, 1 human child, and 50,000 lives hanging in the balance. Aldrich roared a challenge that echoed across the planet, and they dove into hell. The swarm creatures looked worse up close. Each one was roughly the size of a large dog, made of black chitinous material that seemed to absorb light. They had too many legs and moved in ways that hurt to watch, like reality glitched around them. Thousands swarmed across the colony's surface, tearing into buildings and dragging people from hiding spots. Aldrich hit the first wave like a silver meteor. His claws ripped through dozens of creatures in seconds. Dragon fire turned entire groups to ash. Behind him, Brennus, Rin, and Scholar Vex spread out, creating a perimeter around the main tunnel entrance where colonists were fleeing underground. Owen clung to Aldrich's neck, a coalition communicator pressed to his ear. Static and screaming filled the channel. He forced his voice to stay calm. "All ground teams, this is Liaison Owen. Dragon support has arrived. Direct civilians to tunnel entrance Alpha. Dragons will hold the surface." "Who is this?" a voice crackled back. "You sound like a kid." "I am a kid," Owen admitted. "But I'm also your best chance at coordination. Trust me or don't, but tell me where you need help." There was a pause. Then, "Tunnel entrance Beta is overrun. We have 200 civilians trapped in a warehouse 300 meters from safety." Owen tapped Aldrich's scales in the pattern they'd practiced. The Dragon Prince understood immediately and changed direction. They landed hard outside a large metal building. The doors were bent inward, and swarm creatures were forcing their way inside. Screams echoed from within. Aldrich's roar shook the warehouse walls. He unleashed a stream of fire that melted the swarm creatures blocking the entrance. Owen jumped down and ran inside while Aldrich guarded the door. The colonists were a mix of species Owen had never seen. Some were Fenari, others insectoid, still others humanoid with gray skin and large eyes. They huddled together, terrified, as swarm creatures broke through a back wall. "Follow me," Owen shouted. "Stay close and move fast." A Fenari woman grabbed his shoulder. "We can't. The children can't run that distance with those things everywhere." Owen's mind raced. The warehouse had loading equipment, heavy lifters designed to move cargo containers. He ran to the controls and started pressing buttons. Hopping the interface was intuitive enough. The machines hummed to life. "Load everyone into the cargo containers," he ordered. "Pack tight, I'll transport you." They didn't argue. Within minutes, 200 colonists were crammed into 4 large containers. Owen activated the loading machines, using them like massive arms to lift the containers. He drove the machines outside where Aldrich waited. "Can you carry these?" Owen asked. Aldrich looked at the containers, calculating weight. "2 at a time. It'll take 2 trips." "Then let's go." They made 3 runs total, evacuating 600 civilians from cut-off positions. Other coalition forces saw what they were doing and started using the same tactic. Dragons became living transport vehicles, carrying colonists to safety while burning through swarm creatures that got too close. But the swarm kept coming. For every 100 they destroyed, 1,000 more appeared. Owen realized they were fighting a losing battle. "We need to figure out what they want," Owen said as Aldrich landed for his 5th evacuation run. "They're not just randomly attacking, they're focusing on specific buildings." He pulled up a map on his communicator. 3 structures had the heaviest swarm presence. 2 were food storage facilities. The 3rd was the colony's genetics lab. "They're after biological samples," Owen said suddenly. "Food and genetic material, that's what they want." He keyed the main channel. "All forces, the swarm is targeting biological resources. If we destroy those targets, they might leave." "We can't destroy the food stores," someone protested. "The colony needs them to survive." "They need to be alive first," Owen shot back. "Brennus, can you hear me?" The Red Dragon's voice rumbled through the communicator. "I hear you, human. I'm sending you coordinates. 3 buildings, burn them to the ground." There was a pause. "You're certain?" "No," Owen admitted, "but I'm out of better ideas." Brennus laughed, a sound like an avalanche. "I like this boy very well." The Red Dragon was the largest of the 4, his fire the hottest. He dove on the first target building and unleashed everything he had. The structure melted like wax. The swarm creatures near it went into a frenzy, trying to save whatever was inside, but Brennus was thorough. Nothing survived. He repeated the process with the other 2 buildings. Owen watched the swarm's behavior carefully. The creatures were definitely agitated, moving less organized, almost confused. Then, as quickly as they'd come, the swarm began retreating. They pulled back in waves, abandoning the colony and moving back toward space. Within 10 minutes, the last creature had left the planet's surface. Silence fell across the colony. Colonists emerged from the tunnels cautiously, hardly believing they'd survived. Coalition forces stood among smoking ruins, exhausted but alive. General Cade's voice came through Owen's communicator. "What just happened? The swarm never retreats like that." "They got what they came for or realized they couldn't," Owen said tiredly. "We destroyed their targets before they could secure them. They cut their losses." "A child figured out in hours what our strategists missed in months," Cade said, wonder in his voice. "The swarm has objectives beyond just destruction. They're collecting resources." Aldrich landed gently and Owen slid down from his back. His legs barely held him up. The adrenaline was fatting, leaving him shaky and exhausted. Ambassador Kiri approached with a delegation of coalition officials. "You saved 50,000 lives today," she said. "All of you. The coalition won't forget this." Brennus landed nearby, his scales still radiating heat. "The swarm is not as mindless as you believed. They plan, they prioritize. That makes them more dangerous than simple monsters." "But also more predictable," Scholar Vex added. "If they have goals, we can anticipate their movements." Rin looked at Owen with something like respect. The boy's insight changed the battle. Perhaps there's more to be gained from cooperation than any of us realized. They spent 3 days at Terran's, helping with recovery efforts. Owen watched dragons and coalition forces work side by side. He saw barriers breaking down, Fenari warriors sharing food with dragons, Chiton workers repairing structures alongside Scholar Vex, Brennus actually having a civil conversation with a deep-born engineer about architecture. On the third night, Aldrich found Owen sitting alone, looking at the stars. Thinking about home, the Dragon Prince asked. I don't really have a home, Owen said quietly. I had a house, foster parents who were nice enough, but I never felt like I belonged there. Do you feel like you belong with us? Owen considered the question. Yeah, I think I do. Is that weird? No, Aldrich said gently. My mother used to say home isn't a place. It's the people who make you feel like you can be yourself. She sounded like she was smart. She was. Aldrich was quiet for a moment. Owen, I've been thinking. When we return to Dragon territory, the Council will have to make a decision about the coalition. The evidence is clear now. The swarm is coming, and we can't face it alone. You think they'll vote to join? I think we have a chance, Aldrich said. Especially after what happened here. Brennus has changed his mind. Others will follow his lead. Owen smiled. Your mom would be proud. You're bringing dragons together with other species. That's what she wanted, wasn't it? How did you know that? Because she looked sad when she died, like she had unfinished business. I think she saw the future and knew dragons needed to change but couldn't make it happen herself. Owen looked at his friend. So maybe that's why the portal opened. Maybe she sent me to help you. Aldrich didn't dismiss the idea as impossible. Dragons believed in fate and destiny. Then I'm grateful she did. A message came through their communicators. General Cade requesting their presence. When they arrived at the command center, they found coalition leaders waiting via hologram from Haven. We have a problem, Cade said without preamble. Long-range scouts detected the main swarm force. It's massive. At least 1 million creatures, maybe more, and they're heading for coalition space at high speed. He brought up a star map. A red indicator showed the swarm's projected path. Owen's heart sank as he traced the trajectory. They're going straight for Haven, he said. Yes, Cade confirmed. The station where hundreds of species live together, 3 million civilians, the symbolic heart of the coalition. If it falls, the Alliance falls with it. When will they arrive? Rin asked. 4 days, maybe 5 if we're lucky. Aldrich looked at the other dragons. We need to return home immediately. Convince the Council to send help. There's not enough time, Brennus said, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. Even if they vote yes today, organizing a dragon force will take weeks. Owen stared at the map, thinking hard. What if we don't wait for the Council? What if we ask for volunteers? The Grand Council chamber had never held so many dragons at once. Every adult dragon from across their realm had come, summoned by the emergency call. They filled the ancient amphitheater carved into the mountain, scales of every color creating a living rainbow against gray stone. The air hummed with tension and the low rumble of thousands of voices arguing. Owen stood on the speaking platform with Aldrich, feeling very small. Behind them, Brennus, Rin, and Scholar Vex waited their turn to speak. Above them, on a throne that had sat empty since Queen Sariel's death, a hologram showed real-time footage from Coalition scouts. The swarm was visible as a dark mass moving through space, blotting out stars. High Counselor Rin stepped forward, calling for silence. We are here to decide our future. The Coalition has formally requested our aid against the Void Swarm. Before we vote, all perspectives will be heard. He gestured to Brennus. Counselor, you led the opposition to Coalition membership. You may speak first. Brennus moved to the center of the platform. Dragons fell silent, knowing his influence. If he argued against helping, many would follow. I have spent my life defending dragon traditions, Brennus began, his deep voice carrying across the chamber. I believed our strength came from isolation, from maintaining our purity and refusing to involve ourselves in the chaos of lesser species. He paused. I was wrong. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Brennus never admitted error. At Terran's, I fought beside coalition forces. I saw a Fenari soldier throw himself in front of a child that wasn't even his species. I saw chitin workers risk their lives to save strangers. I saw cooperation and courage that matched anything in dragon history. He looked at Owen. And I saw a human child think faster and clearer than our oldest strategists, saving thousands because he asked questions we were too proud to consider. Brennus spread his wings wide. The swarm is coming. If we hide behind our borders and let the coalition fall, we doom ourselves. The enemy won't respect our isolation. They'll consume us like they've consumed others. But if we fight now together, we have a chance. Not just to survive, but to show the galaxy what dragons truly are. Not isolationists afraid of change, but protectors worthy of Queen Sariel's legacy. He stepped back. The silence was absolute. Then Scholar Vex moved forward. I have studied galactic history, the old dragon said. Every great civilization that chose isolation eventually fell, not because they were weak, but because they couldn't adapt. Change is not betrayal of our traditions. It's honoring them by ensuring they survive into the future. Rin nodded. The Council recommends joining the coalition and sending military aid, but this decision affects every dragon. Each of you will vote. He looked at Aldrich. The prince wishes to speak. Aldrich stepped forward and Owen moved to stand beside him. The young dragon's voice shook slightly, but he pushed through. My mother died heartbroken. I didn't understand why until recently. She saw our people choosing pride over compassion, power over cooperation. She tried to change our path but failed. Now we have a second chance. He looked at Owen. This human came to us through ancient magic at the moment of my mother's death. I don't think that was coincidence. I think it was her final gift, a bridge between our worlds, a reminder that strength comes in many forms. Aldrich's voice grew stronger. Haven Station houses 3 million beings. If it falls, the coalition shatters. Species will turn on each other in fear. Chaos will spread across the galaxy. But if we defend it, if we show that dragons stand for more than just our own interests, we become something greater. We become the protectors my mother always believed we could be. An elderly dragon stood in the seats. And what of dragon lives? You ask us to risk our children for strangers. Owen surprised everyone by speaking. Yes, that's exactly what we're asking, because that's what makes something right instead of just safe. His small voice somehow carried across the massive space. My mom died protecting me from a fire. She didn't have to. She could have saved herself. But she chose to be the kind of person who protects others, even when it costs everything. He looked around at thousands of dragons. Queen Sariel spent 3,000 years protecting you. Maybe it's time to honor her by protecting others the way she protected you. The vote took hours. Dragons debated fiercely, traditions clashing with necessity. Finally, Rin called for the count. The vote passed, barely, but it passed. Cheers erupted from younger dragons. Older ones looked uncertain but accepting. Brennus approached Owen and lowered his massive head until they were eye level. You're braver than most dragons twice your size, human child. I hope we prove worthy of your faith in us. There was no time for celebration. They had less than 3 days before the swarm reached Haven. Aldrich made a call for volunteers to leave immediately. Every young dragon in the chamber stepped forward. Many older ones too. By nightfall, 300 dragons were ready to depart. The fleet that assembled around Haven Station was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Coalition, warships from a dozen species formed defensive lines. Dragon warriors took positions at key points, their magic creating shields that merged with technological defenses. Owen helped coordinate, translating between dragon tactics and coalition strategies. General Cade found him working at a communications station. You should evacuate with the other civilians. I'm staying, Owen said firmly. You'll need coordination when the fighting starts. Cade studied him for a long moment. You know, in Fenari culture, we have a word for someone who stands with warriors despite not being one themselves. Chevrak. It means heart of the pack. You've earned that title. The swarm arrived like a nightmare made real. The sensor displays couldn't capture the horror of it. A living wave of darkness that stretched across space, blotting out stars. A million creatures moving with terrible purpose toward the station. Here they come, someone whispered. The battle was chaos. Swarm creatures crashed against shields like waves against rocks. Dragon fire lit up space in brilliant streams. Coalition weapons hammered at the mass. Owen coordinated movements, directing forces to weak points, calling for reinforcements where shields faltered. Hours blurred together. Owen's voice went hoarse from shouting orders. Around him, people fought with desperate courage. A chitin squad held a breach point until reinforcements arrived, losing half their members. Fenari pilots flew suicide runs to take out swarm clusters. Dragons pushed themselves beyond exhaustion, their magic keeping shields active through sheer willpower. Aldrich fought at the front lines, silver scales stained black with swarm matter. Brennus anchored the main defensive position, his roar rallying coalition forces when morale faltered. Scholar Vex coordinated shields with an engineer corps, combining magic and technology in ways never attempted before. The turning point came when Owen noticed something in the swarm's behavior. They weren't just attacking randomly. They were probing, testing, looking for the station's genetic database where information on hundreds of species was stored. They want the database, Owen reported to General Cade. All this is a diversion for a small team to breach the core. Cade immediately redirected forces. Sure enough, they caught a specialized swarm group attempting to infiltrate through maintenance tunnels. Owen guided a Dragon Strike team through the station's interior. They eliminated the threat, but barely. With their objective denied, the swarm began to falter. Coalition forces pressed their advantage. Dragons launched a coordinated assault that shattered the swarm's formation. The creatures began retreating, their hive mind apparently deciding the cost was too high. When the last swarm ship vanished into deep space, exhausted cheers echoed across communication channels. They'd done it. Haven Station was damaged but standing. Losses were heavy, but 3 million lives had been saved. In the aftermath, Owen stood at an observation window watching repair crews work. Aldrich found him there. "It's over," the Dragon Prince said gently. "Is it?" Owen asked. "The swarm is still out there. But now we know they can be beaten, and we know we're stronger together." Aldrich looked at the ships outside. Dragons and coalition forces working side by side. My mother would have loved to see this. They held a memorial service for the fallen. 143 dragons had died, along with thousands of coalition personnel. Owen placed flowers from Terrans at the memorial wall, one for each dragon lost. Counselor Brennus found him there. "The council has made you an official ambassador, the youngest in dragon history." "I'm 8, Owen said. "And you've accomplished more than most do in a lifetime." Brennus was quiet for a moment. "Queen Sariel left us a gift when she sent you. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." 1 year later, Owen stood in a garden on the dragon homeworld. Queen Sariel's memorial had been expanded. Her statue now stood among flowers from 100 worlds, each planted by species she never met but who owed their lives to the changes her death had sparked. Aldrich was officially Prince Regent now, leading their people with wisdom beyond his years. Young dragons regularly traveled to other worlds, learning and teaching. Mixed species crews were common. The isolation that had defined dragon culture for millennia was ending. Owen placed an earth rose at the memorial's base, something he did every year. "Do you ever regret it?" Aldrich asked. "Staying with us instead of trying to find your way home." Owen thought about Earth, about foster homes that never felt right, about being alone even in rooms full of people. Then he thought about Iris, Finn, and Mara arguing about strategy, about Brennis actually laughing at one of his jokes, about belonging. "This is home," he said simply. They walked through the garden where dragon children played with visiting youngsters from other worlds. The sound of different languages mixed together. Barriers that had existed for thousands of years were falling, one friendship at a time. "She knew," Owen said suddenly. "Your mother. She knew this was possible but couldn't make it happen alone. So she found someone small enough to slip through the cracks, someone who didn't know it was impossible." Aldrich smiled. Then she chose well. Above them, ships from across the galaxy docked at the new Coalition facility. Dragons flew in formation with Coalition vessels. The future Queen Sariel had dreamed of was becoming real, one day at a time. And somewhere among the stars, a queen spirit finally rested, knowing her people had found their way.